Our short summertime vacation will start on the Oregon Desert, out in the far east corner of Oregon, known as Oregon's Forgotten Corner. Marge and I came a little bit earlier to get everything ready, and then our daughter will meet us at White Horse Hot Springs, and we'll take her on out to her 160 acres out on the desert. The road's so rough she can't make it in her little car. Around White Horse Hot Springs, there are a few picnic tables and places where you can camp right at the hot springs, and also right behind the hot springs is Willow Creek, which the beavers have dammed up, and there's all sorts of cattails and willows growing there, all ideal for a beaver habitat, and it's quite pretty. Above the hot springs is a rock formation that looks like a prehistoric monster. An old doe and her little spotted fawn make good their getaway out across the Oregon desert. We, we get a net and arrive back at the campground before the sun sets. This old trailer house we have parked here, Marge and I bought it just for a nice place to camp. And we put it on Annette's property and built a fence around it. It looks like our dinner's about ready as Annette's taking it up as the sun disappears behind the Steens Mountains, almost like magic. The next morning, we're all excited and we roll out of bed early and take the short drive out on Coyote Lake. It's a dry lake bed playa. Then we see a cloud of dust billowing skyward, and we look out, and here goes a nice herd of mustangs with a great big tough Pinnacle stallion bringing up the rear as the thunder of hooves puts them deeper and deeper into the sea of sagebrush as we watch them. Then we see yet another little herd of these wild mustangs out in their natural habitat, the desert. These horses, their descendants were one time tame horses. Some of the old ranchers used to run their brood mares out in the desert, and then when they wanted a horse to break, they'd go out and rope one and bring it in and break it. And sometimes they made really good horses. Some of our relatives used to do this in Wyoming, and they would even buy good stallions and put with the herd just so they could upgrade the herd a little bit. And so these are the descendants of some of them. As we go down White Horse Road, we see a delicate sago lily, a late blooming one gently waving in the early morning breeze. Within a short time, we reach the Owyhee Gorge. We rattle and wind our way down into the Owyhee Canyon, one switchback at a time, till we get down to the river. And hopefully those bass will be biting today. We'll be down to the bottom pretty soon. The beautiful sunflowers are in bloom, and we can look over the edge and see some of the old 1860s Indian fighting roads and also wagon roads for wagon supplies, and the mail route came through here on wagons to Silver City. So it's a very historical place. We can see some of the old roads unfolding just below us. As we reach the floor of the canyon, we can see the Owyhee Canyon right in front of us, and also the cave was an inhabited cave by Stone Age man ever so long ago, and they lived on freshwater mussels and fish and stuff. Then we can see an old dugout, which was built by modern man back in the 1860s. They kept a few men here to with extra heavy horses to pull the wagons out of the canyon up this zigzaggy old hand-built road out of the canyon. What a historical place. And there's stories about 'em losing a cannon in the Owyhee River. And there's stories that says that it's still there. But that isn't so. The military doesn't just lose cannons and leave them there. They retrieve them. Otherwise, the muzzle of it might get turned in the wrong direction, pointed at the soldiers, so they make sure to retrieve it. So that rumor is definitely. We can look over the edge a few 100 feet below us and see the Owyhee River winding through the canyon as if by magic. We're moving the edge is real close to the right track on the pickup, and it's making Marge a little nervous. But if she's going to hang out with me, she better be tough and not be complaining about a little thing like a steep bank right off her window. The road is dry, so no problem.
Bass?
When did they do that?
Oh, last year when they were over here.
Oh.
Can you get a shot of the river?
Yeah.
When we reached the bottom, we noticed a Jeep Liberty had forded the river, which was too deep to ford, and drowned out, and it was disabled on the other side. So they called a tow truck in to pull it out. That must have cost them a pocket full of change. We continue looking at the Owyhee River way down below us and just hoping that it'll have a nice big bass in it. And it will. But one thing for certain, this is one of the best hot springs I've ever been to. It has a tremendous flow coming right down the canyon, and then it goes into some very nice pools and spills over a waterfall down, eventually ending up in the Owyhee River. But their hot springs come out all over the place down here. No fewer than a dozen there in a couple 100 yards. Within a short time, we reached the final piece of road that goes right down into the canyon quite steeply. Marge'll get out and make sure I go the right spot, 'cause the hood cuts off my vision right at this point. But I've done it enough, I think I could do it. But thinking isn't good enough. We gotta make certain. So I'll start on the way down the very steep road down into the canyon as they watch for me. Marge and Annette held their breath every turn of the wheel as I managed to negotiate this road right down into the bottom of the Owyhee Canyon. Strictly a low gear road, but we get down there with no problem. As I maneuver down this little 2-track road into the bottom of the canyon, you can look across and see the old wagon road across, hand-built of rock, and the bridge is out where it crossed the hot springs. So as I go down, I see numerous little springs coming out of the hill, and these are all hot springs, and they're giving nourishment to the vegetation down below. There's grass taller than your head down there, and sweet clover the same, and reeds and other things that grow very well down here in this warm water. It's irrigated by warm water, so that surely must be a good thing. It's washed a little bit in the track of the road, but we're getting there just fine.
Well, don't stick your elbow out the window.
Yeah.
There's some very lush poison ivy right along the trail as we drop down into the canyon. We're going down where several little hot springs have merged and gone together, and then they're running right down the road. There are pools right across from it as well, and the tall grass is gently waving in the afternoon desert breezes as we move down to the spot where we like to stop, and then we walk just a little ways to the Owyhee River, and we'll cast some hooks in and see if we can catch us some food to eat. The road might remind you of a narrow corridor as we very slowly and carefully drive through this area of very fertile river bottom ground, which is sub-irrigated by hot springs. We reach the river. Annette throws her hook in and immediately catches one, but it's a smaller one, so she's going to release him, and maybe next time she comes fishing, he'll be big enough to eat. Next, Marge gets into the picture and hooks her a little bigger one. That looks like that'll be something we can have for dinner, and that'll be super good eating. We fish hard till we all catch our limit of 5 of these nice fresh bass that'll make a really good few meals for us. Soon as we get our limits, we decide to head out of there. Annette was getting sunburned, and we didn't have much time to go to the hot springs, so we're going to save that for another day and head through the very tall grass and back to the road out of the canyon. We reach the road out of the canyon where the hot springs are running right down the road, and we'll get up on top and make some good time as soon as we get on some smoother. A few scattered woolly mullein and sunflowers dot the side of the canyon wall as we negotiate our way up out of the canyon, one turn at a time.
Must be something's happened to it. Somebody I just haven't laid it all.
Look, we're going up this bad hill.
Yeah. A good girl going up a bad hill.
Yes. We're getting up it though. Just about. I didn't even have to walk up it.
Well, I can see.
Yeah, it's
the
easier.
hood coming up this way. You get it? See?
A rainbow seems to reach out and touch the canyon wall as we move out of the canyon and up onto the flat. It looks like there's a few little squalls hanging around with a little thunder and lightning. A few little thunder showers are starting to happen, but there's at least clearing on the horizon as we moved up on the flat rangeland where the cattle are grazing, and we'll be out to the main highway in another 34 miles or so. When we reach our desert camp, we see one of the evening primrose has started to grow here. It's a wonder those ground squirrels don't eat it. That's supposedly their favorite food. Now it's the next morning, and it's time for the photo op for the fish. And then I'll fillet them, and we'll freeze some to take home and get ready to eat the rest of them right here in the shadow of the steams on the deck. Each of us will take our turns getting our picture taken with the fish. Then it's my job to get the knife out and start working on them.
Got over at Three Forks, all of our bass.
I guess the only job of the little antelope ground squirrels is to eat a lot of peanuts and drink a lot of water and entertain us. It seems like they do a pretty good job of all of them. These little ground squirrels, according to the book, never have to take a drink of water in their entire life because they have the mechanism to make the water deep down in their little bellies. But why would you make something that's there? It'd be easier just to drink the water and expect somebody else to carry it in. And those peanuts, they're pretty good table fare. But if you eat all you can hold, then you start burying them. And you bury them around with those little paws, dig a little hole, and put them in there and carefully place the dirt back on it. Then that night, the kangaroo rats apparently can smell them below the ground, and they'll dig them up and eat every single one of them. Of course, knowing Marge, it's time to go hunt some sunstones. We see some baby ravens that are just learning to fly, sitting near their nest. And Marge hasn't learned what the real cowboy does. The real cowboy always rides in the middle, so he doesn't have to mess with the gate. And there is the raven's nest, perched high up on the wall of the cliff. And the baby ravens are out of it, but still hanging in there close by. We get to the sunstone area, and we start hunting them. Marge is looking for them, and oh boy, somebody's got a nice little bunch of them. We didn't take a whole lot of them, and then we start back, past the raven's nest and on. We arrive back at our camp just a little while before sunsets, so we'll be able to cook us some fish and have a feast as the keeper of the stars once again puts the sun away. The next morning, as the sun's starting to rise over the distant horizon, we take off. We're going down by McDermott, Nevada, and see if we can dig some of that very, very precious gem quality petrified wood. We have our tools, and Marge and Annette are hard at it by the time I walk down to where the digging is. A good pair of gloves and some digging tools is all you need, and a bucket to put it in. These stones are very highly sought after, and so the government has strict regulations on them. You're only allowed to dig 25 pounds per day and a yearly limit of 220 pounds, which is quite generous. No one probably ever gets that much. But we're going to get after it and see if we can find that special one that we're looking for. And here they come. There's a nice piece of wood popped right out of the bank right in front of our very eyes. And it looks like here comes another one out. Annette's after him right in front of her. And there it is. A very, very nice piece of wood. And that's gem quality, some of the very best in the entire world.
Yes, it is.
That's
Here's
nice.
one, and then here's one. Look at that one.
That's a nice one. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a nice piece of wood.
Yeah. This one here is on top of that one, and I can take this one out first.
Oh, hold it up. Let's take a look at
This is the
it.
first one. That's the first one. And then here's the second one, and it's still buried in the ground more. I'm gonna have to dig him out like this. There he came. Oh, look how big he is.
Wow. Look at that nice piece.
Look at that.
Oh, yeah, that's very nice.
Oh, there's Annette's big rock. That's a big one. It was near the surface, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Wow.
Then, guess who they nominate to pack their buckets up? We carry a little scale so we can weigh our 25 pounds when we get it. And it looks as if everyone has their 25 pounds. So we did well again today, as we usually always do. So we'll load them in and head back to our little desert home. We load everything up, do the last minute gear check to see that we have everything, and then we're underway, heading back to the desert before it gets dark so we can cook our dinner outside again, and that'll be very, very nice. This is just a small little creek that we have to ford. No problem whatsoever. We stop at the little hot springs to remove a little of dirt we've accumulated out digging rocks. And then as we head back, we see the old doe out here grazing around again, but she doesn't have her fawn with her. She must have stashed him and told him to set real still, and wait for her. When she gets done feeding, then she'll come over and give him all the milk he probably would like. It looks like the jet stream is moving over us with a very pretty little layer of clouds as we make it back to the next morning. At first light, we get up and we go past the old Pony Express station, which delivered the mail out in the desert area. A wiry little guy would get on a horse and ride like he was crazy. And this was a double wall, mud for mortar structure. We see a raven's nest hanging high on the cliffs above as we slowly move by. This probably produced a few more ravens for the desert out here. Then we go to the little hot springs to try it out. A dragonfly hangs on a sedge right at water's edge. Some goldenrods wave gently in the desert breeze as we get in the pool and take a nice bath. We get back to our desert trailer house and see our little friends, the antelope ground squirrel, are still there. They would probably like a peanut quite well. Their peanut gathering machine. Being a quite small rodent, any movement he makes out in the open has to be in high gear because they're prey for so many animals, birds and coyotes and many other things, badgers. So if they want to be successful and survive, they have to learn to move fast, which they seem to have pretty well figured out. Another quick drink of water might be in order. It seems like that water tastes pretty good to them, although they're out here where there's absolutely no water. So that's a total luxury when they can get a drink of water served to them out here in a little dish on the desert. They have learned to take advantage of the shade. First, it cools them a bit, and then they makes them harder for the predators to spot. They like to set flat on the ground, and sometimes they'll lay with their belly totally flat on the ground in the shade. That way, if the ground's cooler than they are, they can cool off a little by the coolness of the ground. Another thing these little guys do, when another one comes, they'll go up and do a nose butt with him. That's kind of like a handshake, just a show of friendship and recognition. But the main thing they do here is they're just peanut hounds. The more peanuts they can get, the better they like it. When it gets hot in the middle of the day, they just soon sit in the shade and eat them a nice big peanut. And that is really good. But you can't believe the amount of energy these little guys have. And they run off with those peanuts, sometimes we'll see them till they're almost out of sight, going up an adjacent hill to bury their peanuts. The evening primroses are blooming real pretty now, and I hope they don't decide to eat them some of these mornings or evenings. I was wakened during the night by the sounds of Annette has already left now, and these horses moved in even closer to her on her property, actually, where they're feeding. and they had a wicked horse fight during the night. An old buck antelope is eating the last few bites of grass that he can eat in peace because antelope season's about to start, and he'll be keeping himself pretty busy just dodging hunters. He's practicing his sneak a little bit, and by the time antelope season comes around, he better have that figured out just exactly right. He better speed that pace up quite a bit too. Well, Marge is going to speed up her pace by a Walmart vacation. We're heading for the cabin in Wyoming. We have to go check on it and mow the grass and do a few things. So we'll go by Craters of the Moon, and maybe we'll stop at the hot springs here. We always enjoy Craters of the Moon. It's lava rock as far as you can see, and also it's a national park, so there's a great place for us to camp. And since Marge has got her prune card, we can camp for half price here, and it makes a pretty nice campsite. They take pretty good care of their campground. We turn in to Craters of the Moon National Park and show them our card, and then we go pick out a site and come back and pay half price for the site, which is rather reasonable. And there's running water so we can fill our water containers and get a good night's rest. And then the next night, it'll be a real easy journey into where our cabin in Wyoming is. We found a nice secluded spot amongst the lava rock where we can set our tent up, blow up the air mattress, and have a luxurious night here at Craters of the Moon before we continue our journey the next morning. As we continue on, we go through Arco, Idaho, where the graduating class of every year for a long time have painted the year number on the hill above. Then into Idaho Falls, and uh-oh, it looks like another Walmart vacation. Darn it. But then it went pretty fast, and we headed directly into Wyoming. Took us only a short time once we got in Wyoming to reach the cabin, and it looks like those badgers have been working overtime. They've dug not holes but mammoth caves all over our front yard, and they've Marge's rock garden, they've about destroyed it by piling dirt on it, but the cactus are in bloom real pretty now in the front yard. And so those badgers better learn to behave themselves. I'm not sure they know it, but a badger skin makes a real pretty rug, and I'm considering it with the amount of holes, but I guess that's part of nature. So for right now, they're home free. Maybe if they get too intense another time, I'll consider a badger rug. An old buck antelope comes in to check on things. He would like a lick of salt, but unfortunately we don't have a bit of salt for him. So he's going to have to entertain himself just herding these old does and fawns around just to make 'em behave. These pictures were taken from the cabin door as the doe antelope graze around the edge of our property. And there's a real fine fawn with that old doe. They seem to have a good crop of fawns this year, although there didn't seem to be an abundance of antelope again. During the heat of the day, this old doe's already filled her belly, so she'll just lay there and chew a little bit and then be off on her way and take care of her fawn. Marge and I made a trip down to the Green River, which is 1 mile away, and the pretty flowers were just blooming their heads off down here. So we got an extra treat of seeing these pretty flowers, the sticky geranium and a lot of other types were represented quite well. The wild rose and many other flowers blooming along the banks of the Green River as it flows on its way down to meet the Colorado. Even the lupin are putting on their very best show of color just up from the Green River. It's been a wet year, so the river is running high and the flowers are blooming great along the Green River, winding its way down to the Colorado, and then will drop into the Sea of Cortez. There's a lightning storm about every evening out here this time of year on the high plain in Wyoming. Our cabin sits at 7,600 feet on a sagebrush plain. If lightning worries you, you probably wouldn't want to be here because there's plenty of it about every evening, especially when it gets real hot in the afternoon. Then come evening, the thunder and lightning put on their light show out across the high plains of Wyoming. Marge is out inspecting her yard where she works so hard making a rock garden. She doesn't have a whole lot of praise for the badger. You can tell when she walks stiff-legged like that she isn't a happy camper. But anyway, I got the lawn mowed and a few things done around the cabin. We always have a little bit of something to do here every single year. But wow, what a nice cabin and what a nice place to be. The sunrises can be incredible over the Wind River Mountains, and then the sunset is over the Wyoming Range, and we can also see the Gros Ventre Range from here. So if you like mountains, you would certainly love it here. We see a rabbit, but he can't fool me. He's some kind of a domestic rabbit, and he's nibbling away, trying to gain a little weight. It looks like he might be needing a little more to eat than he's getting. After all too few days, it's time for us to head back to Oregon. We'll go by the desert property and spend another day or so there and then head on home. So we go through Idaho and back over to spend the night at that great hot springs of Craters of the Moon. Then back to Arco, Idaho to take another look at the paintings on the rock where the graduating class of their year has painted the number of the year. They've done that till quite recent times, and now they've put a stop to it. They said it might be dangerous, although over all the years it was done, never was there one person hurt doing it, and they claim it's killing some kind of an algae that grows on the rocks. But anyway, it's really nice to have this bit of history painted up on the rock, and you can see it any place from Arco. Then back to Craters of the Moon to spend one more night before we continue on toward Oregon. This hot springs just on the edge of Craters of the Moon National Park is one that we just cannot pass up. The water is just a perfect temperature, and it's chest deep in places, and it's so perfectly clear and pretty water that comes running in, and a real good flow running through to keep the water fresh and inviting. Along the edge of the pool, it is decorated with some of the woolly mullein and some of the very beautiful sunflowers in full bloom as they stretch their blossoms out right on the edge of the hot spring. We have a schedule to meet, and so we have to be moving on through the fertile Snake River Valley right around the edge of Boise. We take all the shortcuts we can possibly find to avoid the big city of Boise. First, we see some of their farmland, then the familiar cross on top of a little butte, and then across the Snake River, and in a short distance we'll be back in Oregon once again. In a short period of time, we'll be back to our camp in the desert, but the next day, it's time to get started doing something again. So we're going to go to the Owyhee Canyon to try a little fishing and try out those wonderful hot springs there. First, we'll go by the old safe house. This was like a fort built of double wall stones with mortar in between, and then mud for mortar in between, and mud for mortar in each individual rock. The ruins of it are still somewhat standing as we go by and take a look at this old Indian fighting safe house. And from there, it's just across the street. There is a grave site. The necessary information about this old safe house is printed on a sign right at the outer edge of the little enclosure where the ruins of the safe house stands. We'll go past it, look at it, and then we'll go on to the Charbonneau grave site.
Okay, read it.
Founded in 1863 by Dr. E.W. Inskip and his partner Osgood to serve as hostel on Skinner's Toe Road, known as Fortified Dwelling. It often served as refuge during Indian raids.
Is that it? Okay, wait just a second.
1805 to 1866, Jean-Baptiste Charbonneau, as a baby, was with his mother, Sacagawea, a member of the Lewis and Clark expedition. As a man, was a pioneer of the West, of pleasant manner, and esteem in the community. Too long.
Okay, read it anyway. Here, get close.
This site marks the final resting place of the youngest member of the Lewis and Clark expedition, born to Sacagawea and Toussaint Charbonneau at Fort Mandan, North Dakota, on February 11, 1805. Baptiste and his mother symbolized the peaceful nature of the Corps of Discovery. Educated by Captain William Clark at St. Louis, Baptiste at age 18 traveled to Europe, where he spent 6 years becoming fluent in English, German, French, and Spanish. Returning to America in 1829, he ranged the far west for nearly 4 decades as mountain man, guide, interpreter, magistrate, and 49er in 1866. He left the California gold fields for a new strike in Montana, contracted pneumonia, and reached Inskip's ranch here and died on May 16, 1866.
The Charbonneau grave site was great. I'm glad somebody took the time to put